it's been a pleasure to actually see the progress that's been made within World Labs in the past year as well. So let's start by talking about what you're doing and why it's so important.
Yeah, well, right now I wake up every day and think about just one thing and one thing only, which is spatial intelligence. That's the company that I co-founded about 2 years ago with a group of young technologists, and it's called World Labs. So why is spatial intelligence so important, and why do I say that it's the next frontier of AI? If you take a little bit of an evolutionary view of the development of intelligence, which starts more than 500 million years ago, the first thing that kicked off an evolutionary arms race of the development of nervous system is actually perception, not language. Language compared to perception is a very, very new form of intelligence. If you're generous and think about language is probably 500 million years, probably not even that. But more than 500 million years ago, animals start to see light, start to touch the environment. So the tactile and visual sensing.
And do you put instinct in perception as well?
Instinct is a very interesting word. To me, instinct is a very fluffy word. So I'm not rejecting the word instinct, but physically,
physical touch.
It's touch and seeing that kicked off the development of nervous system, and that sets off the evolutionary arms race, so animals becomes more and more active, interacting with its environment, and more intelligent. All this is a long way of saying that the ability to understand, to reason, to interact with, and to navigate the real 3D, 4D physical world is the foundation, as foundational as language intelligence. And the linchpin technology is spatial intelligence. And that's why I believe this is the next generation or next frontier of AI, and this is what World Labs has been building towards.
And so talk to us a little bit about Marble. What is Marble? And you launched that recently.
Right, so Marble is the name for our first generation of our spatial intelligence model. We tend to call it casually a world model, but the truth is that there's so many definitions of world model, it almost doesn't matter if you call it a world model or not. It's a spatial intelligence model, it's a frontier model. What Marble does is that it takes multimodal inputs, whether it's just a sentence, or it's a picture, or it's a video, or it's a few pictures, or it's a simple 3D input. It doesn't matter, it's multimodal. And then it turns that prompt into a fully navigable, interactable world. And that is 3D, which is permanently consistent, which is very different from the video models you see these days. And it has the geometric structure to support whether you want to simulate robotic actions or code up a game and all that. So that Marble is a frontier model. We released it about 2 months ago. It's still first generation. We're very excited to start this journey, and right now it's still it's the state-of-the-art 3D generative world model.
And there's a school of thought that says that if you just go with language as the model, we will not be able to get to AGI. Like, you need to have an augmentation of the physicality of it. Do you of course believe that, but talk to us a little bit about that dimension. What's the big unlock that happens over time?
Yeah.
The obvious use case is robotics, but even beyond that, like, what are the things that we'll be able to do in 5 years with world models that we don't even think about today?
Well, first of all, you don't even have to wait for 5 years. We're already engaging with users and customers to play with this early days of this our world model. We are seeing users using it to develop games. We're seeing VFX users and customers using it to work in virtual production setting, actually commercial virtual production setting. We are engaging with our robotics and simulation partners from big companies like NVIDIA, as well as startups and academic labs, where they're using Marble as training environments for robots. We're seeing that architects and designers are using this for interior design and other kinds of design. We're also getting surprise use cases. For example, clinical researchers have came to us and expressed a lot of enthusiasm. It turned out a lot of psychiatric and mental health research, as well as intervention, requires immersive environments that's personalized in particular situation. For example, OCD patients, some people are triggered by very specific situations. Personally, I'm triggered by dirty laundry, but I'm sure that people are triggered in different ways, and these researchers are studying that. It's very hard for them to get their hands on these environments, and Marble is just every time you prompt within minutes, you get many different kind of environments that you can use. So this is actually a surprise use. We've also seen people with well-being and fitness training to personalize yoga environments or other environments. So I think as Marble becomes better, we're still in the early days, we're gonna see more and more horizontal use cases.
And so now Fei-Fei, you've been in the AI industry for a very long time.
It's a nice way to talk about my age.
No. I mean, like, you're one of those people that hasn't just been like, you're not just like, okay, I've looked at this for 3 years. Like, you've dedicated your life to AI. What surprised you the most as you built this company and as you were starting to think about building the spatial intelligence side?
That's a great question. I know, Jitu, you're the same. We talk about, even in our age, the most important thing is learning and this hunger for learning. Yes, I've been in this field for many, many years. And one thing I would say that I came to AI because of my very personal curiosity. I just love to ask that audacious question of what is intelligence and how to make machines intelligent. But it was very personal. Nobody cared about AI. The world didn't know how to spell AI. And it was very fun. So the past 10 years have completely changed. AI is not just personal. For me, AI is civilizational. And that added a layer of sense of responsibility for me in terms of how I can contribute not only technologically and also as an educator, but also contribute to the healthy development of AI. What surprised me the most as an entrepreneur, couple of things. One is the speed of development of AI in this past few years is just breathtaking. I know everyone, whether we pretend or not, everyone deep in your heart is feeling that anxiety of there's just too much to read, too many blogs, too many news, too many model releases, too many, and that sense of anxiety it speaks of our time, is that this technology is just moving us at a breathtaking speed. So that gives me a lot of excitement, but also keeps me very grounded about how little I know. This famous saying, I don't know anything. Someone like me even feels that. And I want you to at least hear this from me and recognize we all feel that, and don't give up your learning and continue to be curious. The other thing that surprised me and frankly continues to worry me is the polarized rhetoric of AI. Is that too much cyberspace cycles are still spent in discussing AI and its implication at the extreme ends. Whether it's total tech utopian, as if technology is never a double-edged sword, or it's total doomsday, as if humans are facing the existential crisis every minute. That's just not a responsible way of talking about a technology that is so profoundly important to our civilization. Technology is a double-edged sword. but the agency is within all of us, every entrepreneur, every product manager, every business leader, every software engineer, every citizen. We still have to have that agency to know where to lead this technology. And I really, really hope that going to 2026 and forward, we don't stay at the two extreme ends of talking about AI. Let's be more nuanced. Let's be benevolent. Let's have the optimism of using technology for good, but the sense of responsibility of using it responsibly. And let's have that conversation and not just, just optimize for clickbaits.
So what does success... What does success look like in your mind for AI in the next few years? And I really like your framing of this kind of polarized view that we have, all jobs are going to be lost and we're just going to be staring at the ocean, or this thing is completely useless and it's not going to do anything. It tends to be.
Jitu, if we roll time back 150, I don't remember the exact years, and if a version of two of us were on stage, talk about what success looked like for electricity. I think at least, I don't know if people have imagined.
Hard to imagine.
But I hope that there was a version that, our schools are lit, our homes are warm, it'll empower machines to industrialize our life. It'll, in turn, lengthen our life expectancy. More children will be learning when they hit school age. And that's the meaning of technology, and that's the meaning of AI. That's a timeless value. Success looks like when civilization is better. And civilization is made by every single individual pursuing happiness, pursuing prosperity, and pursuing with the sense of dignity. And that is what success looks like for AI and for every piece of technology.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to go down to tactics for a second as well. Again, are large world models as computationally intensive as language models? Are they more, less?
That's a great question. First of all, there are different kinds of large world models. We are very committed to create world models that have 3D, 4D explicit representation to empower robotics and gaming and entertainment and design and all that. And there is other models that are called world model that's more of a video generation models. Right now, in the field, our models are not as large as the bigger LLMs. For GPT-5, I believe, is trained around 10 to the 26 flops. And our Marble model is still a few orders of magnitude smaller.
Smaller. And is that just because you don't have enough data to go out and feed these models as one of the...
I think it's actually both. I think data is one of the scaling law starts with data and model parameters. So data, it plays a role. It's also because this field is early. Language models started, the Transformer paper was published in 2016. So it's, or 27, I think 2016. So it's almost 10 years, right? World models is a much newer field. So we are still in the early, I wouldn't say the earliest. Actually, I think the past 2 years we've de-risked some of the science, but we're still in the relatively early days of figuring out the model architecture. So it's relatively small. But having said that, given the progress that World Lab has made in the past couple of years and looking at our field, I think the next couple of years is going to be very exciting. We're going to see riding the curve of the scaling law in large world models.
And so, we've talked about this before, Fei-Fei, but this thing that was fascinating to me was when you had highlighted to me when we were first starting to talk around the fact that language models are trained on free, publicly available data on the internet, It's easy to go out and get a large amount of data accumulated. The physical data is hard to do, and so synthetic data gets to be a big deal, but you also have to collect that data in a much slower fashion. Walk us through the constraints that brings, and is the speed of advancement of the world models, because of that scarcity of data that you're going to have, going to be similar to what we've been used to with language models? Is it going to be slower? And then how is that going to manifest itself even in physical robotics where, are you going to have a general purpose robot that can do everything for you, or is it going to be special purpose robots just because of the data that we have available?
Right, that's a loaded question, G2. So let's talk about data and let's talk about generalized robots.
Yeah.
They are related, but there's a little bit of nuance. So for example, at World Labs, what is our data strategy? A lot of people ask. Obviously, I can only tell you so much, but one thing is very clear is we take a hybrid data strategy approach. Language is so, I'm so envious of my language friends, because at the end of the day, the input data and the output data is fully observable, is more or less one modality, and that's just text. And also texts are super clean, right? I know that there are words that are not good words, but by and large, the lexicons carry very clean meanings and semantics. Whereas the world of pixels and voxels is just so much messier. And in order to push the boundary of the technology to creating 3D, 4D worlds, we don't have large amount of 3D, 4D data to train our model. So what we have to do is to take the hybrid approach of layering multi-modality of data. So we do have text and images and videos that are more or less at the internet scale, but we also need to have simulated data. We also need to have what we call real-world capture data. You might be wondering what those data are. One of the biggest examples is look at self-driving car. Whether we're looking at Tesla or Waymo or other self-driving car, these companies spend years, decades collecting real-world data as well as simulated data. So creating world models will take that kind of approach. Is it going to be slow? That's a really interesting question, because there are some confounding factors. For example, there's way more people joining this journey, right? Like the compute is much more powerful, the chips, and also the ecosystem is much more mature. We work with data vendors that were not around even 3 years ago. So I think...
And synthetic data is really taking effect pretty well, right? And it's actually adding to your efficacy.
Yeah, and also what we are making will also add to this world of simulation. So there is a flywheel. Our model will also become useful simulation data for robotics, which just a couple of sentences of generalized robot. I have run a robotic learning lab at Stanford for the past decade and beyond. I'm super excited by robots. I do think that as a scientist, it's important to recognize this is a very, very hard problem. Just because the North Star is clear doesn't mean the journey is short. In fact, think about 2006. My colleague, Sebastian Thrun, led the Stanford team to create the first self-driving car that could run 138 miles in the desert of Nevada. And that was when we declared we're going to have self-driving cars. 20 years later, last year was the first year Waymos are running on the street of San Francisco and some larger cities. We more or less have gotten to a major milestone, but that's a very long journey. The difference between car and robots, a car is a square-ish robot that moves on a two-dimensional surfaces, and the only thing the car needs to do is don't touch on things. Don't touch on pedestrians, don't touch on the curbs. Think about a robot. It's a three-dimensional thing, whether it's humanoid or not, working with a three-dimensional world. And the goal of a generalized robot is to touch on things in a way that is not breaking them. So that is a much higher dimensional problem. And we are making progress.
And then the simulation of the hand has been really hard, right?
Dexterity of hands, the precision of vision, the understanding of space, the lack of training data, all this is challenging. This is why I started World Labs, because I know this is a very important problem. We want to work on this. But I also, personally, as a scientist, I don't like to overpromise.
So Fei-Fei, in the last 60 seconds, for the people that are here from the enterprise side of the house, how should they be thinking about world models, physical AI, and all your world that you're thinking about? And then the last thing I'll say, because I know we're running out of time, is we wouldn't be able to have a Cisco AI summit without Fei-Fei anymore, because it would feel incomplete. So we're going to keep inviting you.
Thank you. Well, I'm waiting for my swag.
Yes, we will get to the. Can we please get swag for Fei-Fei?
Just kidding. I still think like a grad student. Free food and swag. Yeah. So for the enterprise, look, especially for world models and spatial intelligence, we're very much an enterprise-facing business, in my opinion. This is, World Labs is very open to talk to enterprise partners. I think there are so many. It's a horizontal technology. We talk about robotics, we talk about simulation, we talk about immersive, interactive entertainment experience, but we haven't talked about more about healthcare. We haven't talked about educational products. We haven't talked about field services. We haven't talked about financial services. We haven't talked about agriculture, manufacturing, inspection, warehouse, and city urban planning, and all this. There's just a lot we can do with spatial intelligence. And I do think this is the next frontier, and invite all of you to, work with us or work by yourselves on this topic.
Fei-Fei Li.